On the way to her grave, it began drizzling. Dark clouds and the crack of thunder promised a downpour, but I was too far from shelter to make a run for it, so I left my bicycle beside the dirt road and made my way on foot through tangled undergrowth to the forsaken little cemetery and its 4 marked graves. I knew the names on each headstone: James Roland King, Doyle E. King, J.P. Bray, and Beulah Buchanan. They each died about a century ago when this community had a church and a school. For years it was called Central Grove, but in 1909 it became Brayton in J.P. Bray's honor. Times were hard, the land was dry and infertile, and most of the people moved away. Today there is nothing left of Central Grove and Brayton. Nothing, that is, except the untended cemetery where Beulah Buchanan was laid to rest in 1917. Beulah was just 12 years old when she died. Beginning with my first visit to the cemetery around 1990, and each time since, I've wondered what happened to this little girl and what became of her family. All of the photos in this program were taken in this vicinity in the 1990s or later. I asked around, but old-timers knew precious little about the vanished community. They had no memory of a family named Buchanan here. For decades there has been no public access to the site because it is isolated in the heart of thousands of acres of forest land owned by Rome's-Berry College. All the access roads are gated. With no visitors to tend to its memories, Central Grove became lost to antiquity. Rome's newspaper didn't carry an obituary for Beulah Buchanan. In that era, only the deaths of prominent citizens made the paper. November 1917 issues carried news of the high price of cotton that made farmers feel better. Central Grove's Grady Terrell had been possum hunting and was nursing his arm this week as a result. And the orphan home was remembered at Central Grove Sunday School October 21st, but there was no word about Beulah Buchanan. Carolyn Lindsay, a helpful genealogist in Gadsden, Alabama, told me that in 1910 there was a John and Laura Buchanan family in Lindale. They had 2 children, Paul, age 11, and Beulah, age 4. Lindale was a textile mill town south of Rome. John and Laura were weavers at the Massachusetts mill in Lindale, and their family lodged in the home of James Landers, pictured here on a Roman Northern Railroad trestle. The trail grew cold 10 years later. Neither John nor Laura nor Beulah were listed in the 1920 census in Georgia. Beulah, of course, because she had passed away 3 years earlier. There was a Paul Buchanan listed as an inmate at the U.S. Penitentiary in Atlanta. He was 21, so his age was right. Might he be Beulah's brother? To find out, I went to the National Archives Southeast Region facility in Morrow to review his prison file. A clerk brought me Paul Buchanan's file. I opened it and saw Paul's mugshot. He was nearly 5'11", blue-eyed, and had wavy dark blonde hair. If this indeed was Beulah's brother, she might have had similar features. The wheels of justice moved swiftly in Paul's day. On October 14, 1919, he was indicted for unlawfully altering a certain note for the sum of $1 to make it appear to be a note for the sum of $5. He was accused of cutting off the corner of a $1 bill and replacing it with the corner of a $5 bill. 12 days later, he was convicted. For $4, he received an 18-month sentence to the federal pen. According to his prison records, Paul was a mechanic who chewed and smoked tobacco. He didn't use liquor as a beverage. He had left home at age 13 and was married but didn't have children. There was nothing linking him to Beulah Buchanan. He had no apparent ties to the Rome area and lived at the time of his arrest in Macon. His parents lived in Gadsden. I wondered if I was engaged in a wild goose chase. I needed to find out if J.E. Buchanan in Gadsden in 1919 was the same person as John Buchanan in Lindale in 1910. A genealogy researcher found Paul's draft registration card and confirmed that his father's name was John Eric Buchanan. The names matched. Now I had a reasonably detailed picture of the Buchanan family. John and Laura had married in 1896 when both were 18 years old. 4 years later, they were working at a textile mill in Tryon, Georgia, and Paul was a toddler. In 1910, they were working at the Lindale Mill. Paul was a boy, and Beulah was a little girl. Then things unraveled for the Buchanans. For reasons unknown, Laura disappeared from the picture between 1910 and 1914, perhaps due to divorce or death. John remarried in 1914. In the meantime, Paul left home in 1912, and of course Beulah died on Thanksgiving Day 1917. John and his second wife, who was 11 years his younger, started a new family and had Harry, Enoch, Parks, and Ola between 1914 and 1928. John and his wife worked in a textile mill in Gadsden. I finally knew what had happened to Beulah's family around the time of her death. But why had she died at age 12? And what became of her mother Laura? And why was Beulah buried at Central Grove, a farming community 10 miles distant from where her parents lived, and with no discernible ties to her family? Those were the questions I still had in 2006 when I wrote Searching for Beulah Buchanan for the autumn 2006 issue of Georgia Backroads magazine. In the next episode here, I'll share with you the answers I found in 2009. Thank you for watching this program.